Hello and welcome back to the Blizzard Arena here in Burbank, California. I'm Cloak and we just finished watching our first match in Group C. Roll20 takes the victory and they move further into the group. Up next, EU Dignitas taking on Korea's Tempest. It's going to be an amazing match. Let's head on over to the analyst desk and get ready for it.
That's right, thank you very much, Kevin. Time to get into business for our second series of the day. As he mentioned, it's Dignitas going up against Tempest. To my left-hand side, we have Skimmy, we have Dreadnought, we have Trixler here, joining us for the party. And what a party it's going to be, because I think that when we've had a lot of these series throughout the past couple of days, you know, we've had some strong contenders here and there and stuff like that. MVP Black blistering through and stuff like that. But I think that Dignitas going up against Tempest has the potential to be our highest level series yet. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a very fair assessment. You know, Tempest being the third seed in Korea, it feels like they are obviously, from being from Korea, very, very skilled at the game, obviously, but their team fighting and when they decide to take team fights seems to be very hit or miss. And I'm really looking to see if the experience here of Team Dignitas, you know, the self-control that they'll be able to display is what they'll rely on to overcome over Tempest.
And I mean, as I alluded to briefly before, it's just a case of, you know, are Tempest that team that people are undervaluing? Are they the case of, you know, they can just sweep through in terms of scrims, in terms of games? They come in as the dark horse and people go, hang on a minute, kind of a bit like what happened with Red Cannons. They're actually a lot better than we thought. And what better team than Dignitas to try and retain that crown, that belt, if you will, of the Korean Slayers?
I think one of the things that I learned at the last Eastern Clash that we were at is it all depends on how Tempest is feeling for the day. They are a team that are very energy-based, and if they are coming in smiling, they're bubbly, you need to be worried about them. And things, too, also, when we talked about them, talked about Dignitas in the interview, they mentioned they're actually not that scared of Dignitas. They're more scared of Roll20 because they beat MVP Black once, and they are Dig, which is crazy to hear because Dig is the Korean Slayers. They dominated at MSB for a reason.
Truly been dubbed the Korean Slayers, you're right. As you say, at mid-season brawl, able to vanquish Korean team after Korean team. Now, let's just address the elephant in the room. It's very clear that Korea then isn't what Korea is now. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. Korea, it almost feels a case of like we were so good for such a long time. And I feel like teams can kind of get into the mentality where you are so good, it's very hard to learn new things when the competition is that much of a step below you. Sometimes we see regions, there's a gap that's very close. But Korea, for a very dominant time, were so far ahead. And we've talked about it multiple times over days 1 and 2 about, you know, either they underperformed or in the next case being that they just realized that EU were that much better coming into this. A lot of these Korean teams are saying, no, we've raised the bar once again. We feel like we are the #1 region.
We can continue talking about it in a moment as we can check in with the bracket to start things off here for our second series. Just a few moments time as we do have Roll20 Esports. Not the easiest of roads through their first match, but they are victorious in the end. Now awaiting the winner of Team Dignitas going up against Tempest. So, Dred, do you have more to add to kind of how that shift has happened for Korea?
Yeah, I ultimately just want to highlight that the relative strength of Korean teams 1 through 3 have always been very, very different from one another. MVP Black is coming in as one of the most dominant teams. Everyone is projecting they will do very, very well. But unlike Europe at the very top of the ladder, all 3 of the teams in relative strength is pretty close. Yes, Fnatic may be a smidge ahead of everything else, but ultimately it is very, very dense in their skill level. So looking at, you know, a 3rd seed European team versus a 1st Korean, I feel like would be much closer than we look at, you know, this type of situation where it's the 3rd seed of Korea versus the 2nd seed of EU.
Trick, thoughts?
For me, I don't know. I think Dignitas is a team that has always been on point with execution. They're coming in here more confident than I've ever seen them before. So I'm actually just very excited for the match in general because of that reason.
Okay.
When I see Bakery and Mane happy and excited to play the game right now, you know you're in for a good time.
Let's focus on Team Dignitas, our first team coming into this series, as of course they are, well, they were 2nd place in the mid-season brawl and only inches away from being crowned a world champion.
I mean, they said they learned a lot from the boot camp. A lot's been discussed as to was it more advantageous for Korea or more advantageous for EU, Europe itself, EU. But they said that, no, we learned a lot from it. We had a bit of an idea of what we thought the meta was. We went over across to Korea. We saw what they were drafting. We realized, hey, hang on a minute. They've got this completely different perception on what is good and what works well. And they've kind of not exactly copied it, but adapted their meta to try and incorporate everything.
I mean, we also criticized them a little bit too in the interview. We're like, hey, you going out there gives time for Korea to adapt, and they are fast at adapting. We saw that at the MSB over the course of a week, and they said, we don't care. We want them to be at their best. We want to beat them at their best, which gave me a lot of hope and respect there for Dignitas coming in, willing to go to a boot camp, learn the meta, and of course, evolve. And now we get to see the fruit of the loom for the last couple of weeks of all this boot camp and what it's done for the teams.
And scoping in a little bit closer here at the roster of Team Dignitas, a player that has really stood out for me over the entirety of HGC has got to be Snitch.
Yeah.
I feel like his diversity and the growth that he has had over the year and the depth of his hero pool is debatably single-handedly like why Team Dignitas can flex and be as consistent as they are, is because he always fills what they need within a composition.
Yeah. On top of that, he was actually playing so much to a point that they had to reduce it a little bit there. They put a little bit more of that offload on top of Mane, which allowed him to become even more defined, which is why Snitch is a jewel in this team right now and has been so dominant.
Let's focus on their opponents. Tempest, the team from South Korea, looking to upset the balance here as Dignitas was dubbed the Korean killer. Skimmy, what are your thoughts on Tempest?
I mean, Tempest, they have an interesting proposition, right? You've got H82 coming in, also with Hooligan as well, and a lot of people are pretty upset once we saw some of these changes come across, but they go into the Eastern Clash and they show that, hey, once again, you know, we're steadily rising up. Don't dismiss us completely. And it's a case of, you know, once again, I keep reiterating back to that point of, you know, the Summer Championship when they did so well of, you know, nobody respects them and say, yeah, you're from Korea. Korea's a fantastic region, but, you know, you're not going to be much of a challenge. In this matchup specifically, Dignitas said they didn't scrim Tempest, so we don't know exactly where that shifting of balance in that 50-50 lies.
Seems like Hong Kong there at the very end has a slightly more subtle American flag attire this time around, so nothing too flamboyant just yet.
It should be noted that this roster is just absolutely amazing. When you look at the track record that they have with their international performance, they seem like they have a dream team almost to a certain extent. It just feels like they haven't found a way to find themselves on the same page, to be able to work as a pure unit. And more importantly, for me, it feels like they rely a bit too much on their aggression and their team fighting. They feel like it's almost a moment of panic. If they suddenly are struggling in the world of macro, they go, this is it, we have to team fight now. And it oftentimes is why I think that they have found themselves into that third seed for KR.
And one thing that we heard from them was that they said getting to the round of 4 will be easy when we interviewed them.
Yes, they think getting around the 4 will be easy, especially if they don't have to face another Korean team. They think it'll be more exciting for them to face off against North America, Europe, or any other region because they feel like they'll be dominant in that fashion. And they're hoping that it all lines up like that because, one, it's exciting for them, and it's exciting for the fans. So they were thinking about you guys. That's probably one of my favorite things about this team is they're always thinking about the people at home, and they have such a lax environment. And when they're that lax, it can be this good. What would happen if for 2 months they just went straight hardcore boot camp? That's scary to think about.
All right, let's check in with the global cheer bar to see how things are unfolding over in the HGC universe as you guys keep contributing to your favorite teams, and you can continue to do so as we continue on towards the Deadly Chaos Lizard. The Arcane one was nice, but the Deadly Chaos Lizard is more deadly. So, gentlemen, looking at how Team Dignitas go up against Team Tempest here, can they continue to be the Korean killers that a lot of people are anticipating them being?
I mean, I think both teams have said if they're on their A game in terms of emotionally and draft prep-wise, they both deliberately haven't scrimmed each other because they are in their groups. So they don't want to try and reveal too much at this stage. We saw what Roll20 just did before. This is, I think this series alone is going to tell us a lot as to where their power levels really lie in terms of the global scale of Heroes of the Storm.
Let's find out which battleground we're going to be going to for game number 1 here in this best of 3 as Team Dignitas will take us to Infernal Shrines. It's a map where they have a lot of comfort.
A lot of comfort. It's a very standard map in Europe. It's one of the first 3 battlegrounds you normally see in a best of 5 series. It gives you macro capabilities, allows for you to run a majority of compositions that are strong. So Dignitas should be in a good spot with it. Going back to your previous question, though, about whether Dignitas can continue to be the Korean Slayers. I do have a slight worry with Dignitas, and that is that they are not able to unleash their main weapon, which is going to be Mane Mages, period, because they have double support that they are playing because it is the meta, and you can see a little bit of resentment towards that. You know, Mane, he wants to play those high explosive characters, and him playing a support almost feels like a shame, but at the same time, that means we're working together as a team. So it's this kind of double-edged sword that I want to see how it unfolds in the next couple weeks.
All right, get ready. Game number 1 here. One of the biggest series so far of the tournament. Team Dignitas goes up against Tempest to see who moves on to the winners match.
Now, what I'm really interested on their trick, actually, is we saw what Fnatic did yesterday, where they went back to that sort of mid-season brawl meta of just running that one support. I mean, Dignitas for a long time were running compositions very similar to that, so I'm wondering if we're going to try and see here from Dignitas, let's try and play standard, not reveal too much, but as it is, you know, it is the group of death. Both these teams, all these teams really going to utilize anything they have to try and get out.
And on that same question here, looking towards Dignitas, what do they need to do? For me, it is relying on not going to the team fight. Dignitas seems to be, compared to the rest of European teams, a bit better or a bit more dependent on their team fight success, but I do think here against Tempest specifically in this matchup that they should focus a bit more on their macro, because if you can set Tempest to feel like they need a all-in Hail Mary play, you can almost 100% rely on the fact that they will go for that initiation, and I feel like that is going to be a really good tool that Dig can, again, use over and over again throughout this series.
Question for me is, how high of a priority will Brightwing be between these two teams? In the tournament so far, we've already seen it a lot, but we do know that in Korea, Brightwing is very popular, and Dignitas towards the end of the HGC phase and their season, we're starting to lean a little bit more on Brightwing as well. So that will be a hero that we'll definitely see mixed up a lot in these rotations. ETC and Sonya, though, will be the front line set up for Dignitas.
Just a snap pick there. Wonder already, will Tempest even risk going into the Tracer opportunity with that high Tassadar? This is something that Korea has, you know, utilize as that double support meta, using the high mobility, high single target burst to try and dive into the backline. It does provide a bit of risk, considering that Sign typically is going to be the Tracer player flexing over into that, and it makes the entire, you know, roster and who's onto what hero have to kind of mix up a bit there.
Does it concern you, though, that ETC and Sonya on the other side, both heroes that if they do catch that Tracer, it should be a dead Tracer?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, yes, it is a heavy deterrent to go into that direction, but Tempest in their draft diversity overall has been very unorthodox compared to the rest of its region. So I'm willing to, you know, kind of throw out anything that we've seen from them into the past year.
Wouldn't mind seeing it here. We've seen Tassadar and Tracer in the mix a few times at the highest of win rates, but we haven't seen it with Tempest. Here we are, Rhaegar and Johanna coming in here. So we have Johanna, not seeing much of her in this tournament, but she does have her strengths, and she got buffed a couple patches ago.
I mean, she's played 4 games so far at this tournament, not a single win on the board so far, and we've all been complacent saying, you know, why? Why would you know, pick this over the likes of Mirrodin? I mean, in this situation here, it is a map that is, to a degree, dependent on that wave clear, which would be something that they're desperately after. I mean, the same with Tesla and Rhaegar as well, but it comes down to this ideal of what are you building for, teamfight, macro, or shrine control?
Right now, it looks like it's Shrine Control and Macro is the focus. Tassadar, Rhaegar, and Johanna all are amazing in the wave clear department, some of the best of their singular roles. So I automatically feel like Tempest is putting a lot of emphasis there into their macro play and not so much into that team fight. Granted, they do have a lot of great synergies within all of those heroes.
Exactly.
And I'm very much expecting to see, you know, that Vala kind of follow up here with that Reign of Vengeance right after the JoJo Condemn.
That's what I like here. You point out all the points about map control and being able to control the waves, but we also get the control of an ETC and Sonya to a degree, which is needed in this tournament. We have yet to have a major answer for that Sonya. But if you're able to lock down that ETC, you stop that 1-2 combo from coming in, the power slide into a poison spear that can delete basically Tassadar or Rhaegar.
And one, you know, interaction that we don't get to see too often that I really do enjoy is Tassadar, specifically Archon into Sonya, and trying to kind of flank the Sonya and draw aggro. He's one of the best heroes at being effective at low HP, and if you can ever make the Sonya not dive onto the back line, it is a very, very good thing for your team. But that snap lock-in for Vala and Morales here, Skimmy.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I feel like definitely Tempest were looking for that, but I feel like if you still go down that route of picking up Tracer, it'd be a complete mistake given the first 3 picks that Tempest have gone for so far. So Lunara seems to be a little bit more appealing given you got Morales, but that 5th and final pick, you'd imagine they will still flex into that double support, which would patch that single support style that Morales lacks in.
I'm struggling to identify what is going to be the hyper carry that fits into the composition now for Tempest. With the Greymane remove the Vala, Lunara so far out of the current meta.
There's still Cassia, but Sonya Poison Spear into that, we've seen that shut that down multiple times.
Yeah, I'm immediately feeling like maybe they're going to have to transfer into that Tracer I was talking about before to make up for this clever play Dignitas has had post-secondary ban phase. It just doesn't synergize with that questionable Johanna that you brought up a little bit earlier there.
I mean, I would bring up Zul'jin as a possibility, but we legitimately heard Tempest say, no Zul'jin, he is bad. Literally in perfect English.
Time to find out.
Let's find out if they would pull it out here. And surprise us all, it's going to be that Tracer into the Malthael.
Did not expect the Malthael coming out from Tempest there, and a quick response for the Falstad. We've talked about the interaction between Falstad and Malthael. In my personal opinion, it's just a direct counter. Yes, it does rely on a bit of, you know, timing, and it's still a little bit of a skill matchup, but ultimately, if Falstad plays his cards right, he's going to be the one coming out on top.
Something that really interests me about this draft is just how quick and responsive Team Dignitas have been with all these picks. It's never any like, what are we thinking? Let's discuss this. We're locking this one in. That's what we want. That's what we're taking, and that's what we're running with.
So much so that they start with solo support.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming out here and making a statement. I mean, it makes sense with Sonya and ETC when you have that strong front line, and Morales is great again behind a major front line that's very robust like this. Already, Sonya's hard to kill, and now you have Safeguard and heals popping in when you have the energy available. Good start here for Dignitas, and I like their confidence here coming in and being deliberate with their picks. That is something they've always done at tournaments, is say, we are ready to move in, and they always respond quickly.
I can already say I was a bit, kind of skeptical about Tempest's success here. I talked about it, team fighting versus the macro focus, but again, the deliberateness, I guess is what I'm going for here, that we saw out of Team Dignitas with their draft, and we talked about the clever play post-secondary ban phase. They seem very calculated in every ounce of that draft, and suddenly I go, I'm really scared now here for Tempest.
And I feel as if Mene's a little bit wasted on that double support role. He was saying, I hate playing Brightwing every single game, and I can almost imagine in a comical way, he sees the draft and goes, Brightwing's banned, boys, I ain't playing double support, we're running at one support, let's get me on some DPS, I want to get kills.
The funny thing is I almost wanted to bring it up, but there you go, you beat me to the punch for sure. Looking at these two comps, how they match up against one another, is the Tracer Malthael enough to bust through this lineup that Dignitas has?
Falstad and Vala will have to be careful. Obviously, we always talk about the squishy in the back line. If Tracer is able to get back there, especially off the back of a good engage from a Malthael, I could see it working out. But I like the control that is here for Dignitas. This is very EU, is what they've played in the past, and this is something that they pull off well.
I will say that going into that singular support into the Task Tracer composition is one of the... When you have a Tracer, she only has one win condition in team fights, is getting that one blow up. So if you have the double sustain, the odds of her getting that, much like reset compositions, it just kind of immediately falls apart. So not going into that for Dig, we talked about the confidence displays, but I ultimately feel like it would have been a safer draft to go in that direction. So I feel like it does give Tempest maybe enough of an edge to use that Task Tracer, dive onto the solo support, especially a Morales, one of the best to be able to play that into. So immediately it goes, Tempest here actually might have a better shot than I originally gave them.
Yeah, I think to really just finalize that point, okay, if they're not winning in the wave clear, if they're not really putting up much of a control when it comes to the Shrine phase themselves, alarm bell's going to start ringing for me personally for Tempest's chances in this game. Otherwise, I feel like the team fight potential that comes out of Dig, very comfortable, very confident, very safe.
We have a little bit of time here whilst our teams get ready and good to go. I'm going to play a devil's advocate and say, is something like a Tracer Malthael something that's going to threaten Bakery in the position that he's normally in? Because usually we see him going for Medivac, and then if they are diving onto the backline to try and get to him, he pops his Medivac and he pops away for a little while. So they don't really have the burst to bring that Medivac down. So there are some ways that Morales can deal with this.
And the Falstad situation, right? You have the failsafe of being able to protect. There are tools to help defend the Morales. It just goes, when I look at a Task Tracer composition and a map like Infernal Shrines that is so dependent on macro, I go, I can outpush you, even with your good wave clear. So the biggest thing I got to do is stop the pulse bomb damage. And again, it's not that it's bad the direction Dignitas went, but ultimately it did leave some holes that maybe they could have avoided.
Well, it sounds like we are ready to go to game number 1. It's one of the most anticipated matchups here for the group stages. So let's get into it. Dignitas goes up against Tempest to find out moves on to the winners match.
That's right, Groot, How, and Rocketweed here to bring you the most anticipated, the most exciting starting match of the group stage, Tempest versus Dignitas. What do you think of the draft, Jay How?
Oh, it's kind of, I did not expect the Tracer. We know they've been known to play that. I didn't expect it on this Battleground. I think the guys brought up a lot of really good points. So it's like 2 different drafts, and those are the kinds that I like because Tempest likes to fight, Dignitas likes to play. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah, we saw all of the elements, right, the ingredients for Tempest to be able to get the recipe for Tracer. Since it is Sign who plays, they have to have a warrior that Hankono feels comfortable on.
Were like that,
so they got Johanna, then you and I know that they don't like to get the Tracer until after they've dealt with Brightwing, and so they had to ban Brightwing, and by that point, they were ready. So let's see how it's going to work out. Let's hit into game 1 of this best of 3 between Tempest and Dignitas. I am so pumped to get this series underway. I have been so excited, Jay. I've been looking forward to this series all week long.
All week long, the minute they sent us our rotations for casting, I'm like, wait a minute, I get that series, let's go. I'm really excited.
We always get good series, you and I. Here we start. And in the blue, our Team Dignitas from Europe, Bakery, will be playing Lieutenant Morales, JPL playing ETC. We've got Mene playing his Falstad, potentially a Mage Stad, Snitch playing Vala, and finally, Xylia playing Sonya.
On the right side for Tempest in red, we are going to have Hyde, of course, on the Rhaegar, as we know him to be. H82 on the Malthael. See what he can do on that melee roll. Lockdown, most exciting hero in the game of Tassadar. Sign, of course, on the Tracer. And then rounding it out will be Hankono on Johanna.
Haven't seen a lot of Johanna. There's been a little bit of Johanna here and there. JPL finds all of the team of Tempest, gonna face melt away. And Dignitas going straight into the bottom lane. This was just a clever ploy to slow things down, get some time for Dignitas to do some damage in the bottom. Going to a different lane. They don't want to be vulnerable, right, to the Tracer picks early on in the game, because there are some heroes who will be vulnerable to those picks, and that's what Tempest is all about with this Tracer pickup.
Stay super safe on these rotations early, and you know, you alluded to the fact that Mene loves doing damage. He loves playing mage builds, but he has resigned himself to the seasoned marksman build, leaving that burst damage, of course, over to Snitch, playing that Q build, Hungry and Arrow build that we've seen become so prevalent over Phase 2.
What was cool to see as Tempest was opening up with their draft, getting things like Rhaegar and Tassadar earlier on, is yes, it did allude and give them the opportunity to get into the Tracer, but it also made sure that if they did get Tracer, who was low on wave clear until level 13, they still had people who could keep the lanes pushed in their advantage and give them places and openings for Tracer to move around the battleground and just try to get those earlier picks on somebody like Morales or even Fala.
And the interesting thing, that's a very good point, because you can translate that over to the Shrine as well, because their early part of the draft was clearly between the Tash, Johanna, Rhaegar, a lot of Shrine control. And I had the point yesterday of, like, there was a composition like this, but it was a more team fighting style map. Here, it's like, all right, if we don't get that burst kill off that pulse bomb, things like that, we have something to fall back to. That's why I love Tempest draft here. They've got a good blend of a little bit of fight and a little bit of Shrine clear. It's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I adored it too. And on the topic of the Shrine clear, Sonya for Team Dignitas will be crucial in that regard. Not going into block, we've seen a lot more of Warpaint here, that auto attack, being able to sustain yourself a little bit more. There's just no purpose of getting blocked versus the team composition that Tempest had between Tassadar and, of course, Tracer. The first Shrine is underway. It is in the middle lane.
I really like the approach of Dignitas here. They recognize they're not going to have that great clear, which I think is where the seasoned marksman comes in. Once they get that boomerang at level 7 for Falstad, it'll make it a bit easier. But when you do not go into that multi-shot build, Gilly, you're struggling for the clear, especially when we look at the other side for Tempest.
J-Hell, this is exactly how we thought this would play out. Dignitas focused more on the macro game, on objectives, playing the long game, and Tempest is ready to brawl. H82 on one of his best heroes. We talked a lot about the Tracer, but we haven't even touched on H82 playing his Malthael. He is extremely self-sufficient on that hero. Tempest have devoted everything they have to the Shrine. They need to get it, and ideally get some kills along with it, but JPL staying strong in the front, keeping everybody safe with his zoning.
It's funny because we see a nice Punisher picked up there. Zelia kept splitting off, and by the way, Falstad stayed bot lane the whole time, and Dignitas is looking at almost a full level lead. And the thing about that is, by contesting, patiently and cautiously contesting, they bought more time, because every time you take a skeletal defender away from your opponent, it just takes them longer to capture that. Very well done by Dignitas overall.
And it ensures that Tempest had to stay there too. Otherwise, Tempest is losing out on every front. So they forced Tempest to keep what they committed to there. And now Dignitas doing one of their patented moves that they do on Infernal Shrine, starting early on with the camp invades, heading straight to the Khazra of Tempest. Try to clear these out, then they can go back and get their own. Tempest should be pretty familiar with this kind of aggression. They do, after all, have MVP Black in their region, who loves camp invades themselves. But Tempest will have to resign to defending the camp, and that just continues the pressure that Dignitas has already started up versus Tempest.
Very well versed in that very aggressive style there in Korea. But big things will be happening here post level 7. Boomerang comes online for Falstad. Vala gets that repeater arrow as she goes into the Q build, allowing some big burst damage. We'll see if Dignitas, when they have those invades like that, obviously they've studied their teams. Maybe they know that they'll have further opportunities at other points in the game. So now post level 7, we'll see if they can really put that on. Talk about burst damage as well, Poison Spear. So if they find somebody out, they will be punished.
Now, Johanna historically has had an issue with trying to set up and engage with the team. Conviction being moved to level 4 and giving that 25% movement speed is helping a lot with that. And now adding Blessed Momentum to that so that Johanna can continually have these condemns of giving her that movement speed and getting better up into a position to be able to start and hold down a fight for Tempest. But J-Hal, you were mentioning maybe that we might see a different heroic for Johanna.
Yes. I believe we were talking about when you're going this dive style, we might see a little bit of falling sword action, which was recently buffed. I think for the fans, a little bit of crowd pleaser action a la ETC might be a little bit fun. I don't know if we'll get that. Obviously, the Blessed Shield so strong and on a short cooldown, but Falling Sword could be considered.
Now Tempest is trying to get some structural damage back at Team Dignitas. They've moved to the bottom lane, but Dignitas are just going to counter siege, and they're the ones who are doing it in the lane with the Punisher. This is going to be really nice for them. Johanna moving around the side from a flank, avoided from a barrel roll of Falstad in the bottom lane, but this does open up Tempest to put their full aggression and the aggression of the Cosra camp on the fort.
This is a really interesting approach when we look at it from a macro style, because when you have those moments, the best response that you could possibly do is to not respond to what they're doing and simply respond in your own right by pushing top. The thing about this whole situation is that now you're going to be pushing. Yes, Tempest has a slight lead, but you're definitely getting this Punisher. And by getting this Punisher, Gilly, taking out that fort, the Punisher instantly gains more value. So I feel Tempest, they almost felt like they had to try and get 10. It'll make the defense a little bit easier. But if we look at late game, because the next Punisher will not be top, but when it starts to cycle back through, we talk about potential win conditions being open up there. We'll see how much impact it has late game.
Yeah, this is a monstrous push for Team Dignitas. Not only did they get the Punisher, with the Shaman camp, they have already taken down the towers. This is a really scary Punisher jump, but they use Iron Skin earlier on just to get the Punisher down in a place where Tempest can attack it and try to bring it down quickly. But this is a very early keep that most certainly will be going down, and a medevac dropship for the disengage.
Easing on out of this one. It's like, all right, it was fun. I appreciate you guys having us as guests, but we're going to head on home now. See you next time. But as you said, very early keep here, just 6.5 minutes in. And again, that's a potential win condition down the road for Dignitas. So very well played by them on the recognition, pushing that in. That's a major lead here, especially when you look at the fact that Tempest is the one without a global this game.
Yeah, it's really cool that Team Dignitas were able to do that because they have so many different disengaging abilities. They also used Gust just to make sure that they could get out of there fully focused on getting a win condition earlier on, opening up the battleground, and making things harder for Tempest, making them make maybe some bad choices around future shrines, because now there will be forever Catapult pressuring that lane.
I think the one thing that to consider here is we saw last time Dignitas went in for the camp invade. This time, they kind of pulled the reins back a little because they know that they instantly have battleground control. They've got Falstad as the global, they have catapults pushing, so instantly they found themselves in a lead, which makes it a little bit easier. But we've got a Blessed Shield going out onto JPL. The Pulse Bomb's going to come out. He does go down as the first blood will be there. The shield, or excuse me,
Healing?
the armor,
yep.
Armor reduction and everything there ended up going in. The healing reduction definitely paid off.
Yeah, that's what I was going to know,
death.
is the Touch of Death healing reduction from that, just to make sure that Morales couldn't keep ETC alive through that. And that is most certainly what Tempest needed to do, and that's what they were looking for. What Tempest is known to do when they get behind in the game. Look for the fights. Dignitas should have realized this, should have known that Team Tempest would want to be out there somewhere to get a fight, and that's going to create some space for Tempest to move back, get some of their mercenary camps controlled, and try to get a presence in these lanes now so that they can either look for more fights or have a better setup for the next shrine.
But I want to talk about what just happened there, because ETC had a very aggressive power slide, which means that they're not on the same page communication-wise, and I've analyzed JPL. I've watched every single one of his ETC games in Phase 2. He has a little bit more aggressive approach than his EU counterparts, to where he will power slide to the enemy side. He hit the bump, he hit the slide. And generally, unless you know that your team is following up for a kill, you never want to power slide to the enemy team. He has the burst damage there, but we saw 0 follow-up, and so all he could do was casually walk away. And that was actually, I think, one of the big points there. It's a very subtle thing, but if you don't have that follow-up, you don't have that burst kill, it's almost bad to go in and power slide to the enemy side. He ended up getting punished for it. And a lot of that, maybe it's communication, maybe it's just a little bit riskier play, but things like that have to be taken into consideration.
What made me happy from Tempest in that team fight too was not an overcommitment of heroic abilities. Using the Pulse Bomb, yes, he can build that up really fast, and then Blessed Shield, which is on a low cooldown. They still have things like Tormented Souls. They still have more options for them if they want to take a fight along with this Punisher, and this is an Arcane Punisher, so it's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt indeed. It's gonna be pushing in here. The mid wall already down. Nice bait on over. They're gonna pull it all the way back as far as they can. Of course, having Bala on your side with that Q build definitely makes this a little bit quicker. Fort's gonna fall. We'll see how much more Tempest can get with it.
Falstad has pushed the top lane all the way into the base, still hanging out up there. If the gate goes down, we might see him try to flank back behind, fly in, and then gust everybody into the keep. Tempest realizes this. They do not want to, of course, take any core damage, but they also don't want to be opened up to that. Because there's already keep down, they need to make sure that they're backing off at the appropriate time. That will make future sieges a little more difficult for Tempest.
Falstad just like straight chilling. You know, sometimes we'll see the giant killer at level 13. Instead, we're seeing the cooldown reduction on that tailwind. Again, Mene likes to do damage. One of the best ways to do damage is with that boomerang, that Q going out. I think that's more of a personal choice. I mean, there's not a lot of good giant killer targets on the other side. It's just generally the way that it's complemented. But definitely mixing it up a little bit. You got a slide and a lot of damage going out here.
Slide, Rain of Vengeance, Iron Skin is used, Mosh Pit catches, but there's a cleanse to get H82 out. Grenade was hoping to pull him back into the frame, but H82 is A-okay, and Tempest survives the mosh pit. A long cooldown for Tempest to do something with.
Yeah, it's a particular interest, and we actually saw Blessed Shield just kind of come out there as well as a little safety net. So, I mean, I guess if you call a cleanse and a Blessed Shield, those are each 60 seconds. They kind of equal 120 seconds, just that's not the way the game works. Mosh pit, 2-minute cooldown, not going to be there for the next team fight.
Yeah, and especially, it's such a game-changing heroic when you look at the types of heroics there are. That's why it's such a long cooldown, is because it can single-handedly win you a game. ETC, once he gets 20, again gets this huge spike where he can single-handedly win the game with something else. So every time you're able to get through that, it is just a sigh of relief for a team.
Rhaegar potentially getting flanked here. As they go into the bush, they don't find Rhaegar in there. They don't have the hard flank. I almost feel like they might have been able to do that, but I don't know. Anyways, Gilly, check this out. We've got top shrine up here, and we talked about how much value that first one got getting all the way to the keep. Now, we're kind of in that danger zone. If Tempest, obviously, they have the Johanna, you can bait it over the mid keep, stay alive a little bit longer. It's a little bit early in the game, but you get one, maybe two picks. If you're on Dignitas, you take out a member or two of Tempest. This Punisher could be game ending. It's a bit early, but it definitely is a possibility. A
potential lights out situation for Team Dignitas, but Tempest also doesn't have to worry about being across the map from the lane where the catapults are pushing. So there are pros and cons to being on either side of the battlefield over this top shrine.
Just 17 seconds away from that mosh pit. They're going to just go ahead and backdoor in. Just backdoor the core right away. This is Dignitas going in. They're going to try and do this right away. We see all members of Tempest hearthing. They are starting to take the shields out. They're getting the shields down now. The health on the core starting to fall, but this is a crazy call, Gilly.
Mosh pit. No, he takes him down, but Tracer's inside the mosh pit. Now he's out. Dignitas are on the core. They're trying to bring it down, but they are getting slaughtered in this. They lose Falstad. They've lost 4. Tempest defends their core at 55%.
I know what you're saying right now. If you're out there watching, what in the hell are you thinking, Dignitas? But let's put it this way. This is like old school Juice Pirates in that you have a fort that is defending top, which is why right now you see Tempest, they're making a move for the middle keep. They have to open up a win condition. They have to have their own back door because now Dignitas, they're 55%. They only get stronger as the game goes on. Remember, level 20 upgrade on the medevac now has that protected status when you come out. Now they can do that again. Getting through 55%, I mean, they just brought down 45. Gilly, this right now is a threat. They could backdoor again. They could backdoor again later. It's a strategic call. This is some new blood. It's such a different take on an old school strategy. It's looked wild, it looked crazy, but that is next level right there.
Jay-How, I think back to the series between Dignitas and Fnatic, and you know, a lot of people have been looking at Fnatic, and because Fnatic won mid-season brawl, have just put Fnatic on an echelon above everyone else. But Dignitas was the only team to take games off of Fnatic this entire part. They took 2, and they were basically about to win it. Medevac is up, but there's a Punisher that Team Dignitas are going to head to instead, at least trying to show that they're there, seeing if they can get Tempest up. Maybe that's the play. We'll have to see, but there was a point where Team Dignitas tried to go for a core, but it wasn't as concerted as that one. Ended up losing the game. They did lose the series, but Dignitas has evolved since then. They are a much stronger team.
If you tell me I give up 45% of a core for a fort, I will take that all day long. Yes, you give up a bit of experience, but you saw Tempest. They were all hanging back. There was nobody pushing forward, and now that is a threat for the entire game. This is a strategy if you told me this was a strategy coming in, I'd be like, I don't know if that's going to be the case. And now that it's here, I absolutely love it.
And think about, as you continue to go to these later talent tiers at 16, we don't see Stim Drone. Obviously, you need the medevac to make that kind of strategy work, the backdoor, so you don't have the damage from that. But now you're getting Nerves of Steel. At 20, you get Ignore Pain, so Sonya can last for a lot longer on there. ETC maybe be able to get something like Torbus for a longer hold on people, or even just Deathmosh to hold him down if you try to focus him. And then the threat of Wind Tunnel. We saw it yesterday from Fnatic and how they're able to use that versus Team Freedom. It is terrifying.
You are selling me so hard. Say no more. I am all in post level 20. Dignitas, show me what you got. They do have to hope that the next Punisher is not mid. Again, that mid keep, again, you can always bait it, but there's always the threat. You have to make sure you kind of have to avoid team fights to a certain extent. It's a very dangerous game that both teams are playing right now, and this is going to shape up to be a very exciting ending.
It's perhaps the most dangerous game. This is only a best of 3. No room for error when you are playing against a team like Dignitas, like Team Tempest here. They want to be able to go on in the upper bracket because that is a possibility of being able to get first in your group. And we know that first in the group is such a better advantage because of how we're going to be looking at the round of 8, the quarterfinals at BlizzCon.
All right, Dignitas in a moment. We might have a fight, but their inability to risk it right now. It's 20 is dangerously close here for Tempest. That mid keep is a liability. At this point, death timers are long enough that if you have a team wipe, it will be game for either team right now. We already saw the medevac. Right now, Tempest, they have got to be on edge. They've got to be on their toes right now, Gilly. We've got mid Shrine. The Shaman camp going to be pushing top to keep those catapults at bay momentarily. Will Dignitas pull the trigger pre-20 without that protected stat?
Early dimensional shift and lockdown catching up will be the slows, the dismounts on people as Honkono was heading in from the other side. But nobody caught with that 20 advantage for Tempest. Radiating faith for Honkono. Not indestructible. Longer stun, more stuns.
It's just Honkono in a nutshell here.
Oh my. That's such a risk.
Hit multiple people. We'll see if they can capitalize on that. Again, the Tracer, Malthael composition, of course, Malthael holding his, seeing if he needs that insta-res. But right now, Dignitas, they're playing the 20 game. That is all that they're doing, is they're playing the 20 game. They're going to have to use this position here. Mid-keep will fall. At this point, you have to cut your losses, play it safe, bait that Punisher over to the mid or top, whichever one you're feeling comfortable with. You just have to soak now, play the 20 game. That is all that they're doing, but it could go so wrong if they're not careful.
Dignitas has set up a foundation now to win this game through the top. They have taken out the bottom four at least, but yeah, continually canceling these backs. Tempest, ever watchful of that top lane?
Dignitas is not showing. And I believe that was a medevac threat. But that medevac is simply a backdoor to your base. It is on a short enough cooldown. Baited so hard there as the sound went out. The keep should still fall here, but Dignitas playing it so safe. I am just astounded at how well. But Tempest, they recognize us, Gilly. They're going
mad. They're going on in with those 20s, with the Twilight Arc on Tempest. Will do the same thing that Dignitas did to them a few minutes ago as they start to try to bring down this core. But they don't have a lot of siege with what they have here. They've got a Malthael. Malthael doesn't add a Reaper's Mark to the core. They haven't even been able to cut through the shields yet, but they're hanging around. They're seeing if they can find anybody who steps out. Just one toe over the line.
That's it. They still have Gust if things get crazy here. Falstad has to be extremely safe. They get the pressure. Remember, no indestructible. That is Iron Skin that is out. You see the heals coming in there. The shields have fallen down to 94%. This is such a tense moment for both teams. They just have to wait for more minions to get here before they can posture up. They're going to clear those of Dignitas. Level 20 getting dangerously close. The core is now fallen to 90%. If they commit, they will hard commit. The core continuing to trickle away.
Tempest always going for what Rally Jaffa calls the super plays. Dread talked about it here. They want to take control. They want to be the ones who dictate whether they win or lose. Right here, the post bomb. HGC is gone.
AT's gone. The mosh pit is no longer available. The Gust is now out, and we see H82 going in. Snitch getting so low, finally getting healed up. The core down to 50% and falling. They are still on this right now. They are trying to end the game in the same cautious approach.
30.
It is down to 30.
25% and still going down. Tempest are staying strong as they take out Sonya. Tempest take out Team Dignitas in game 1.
Oh my, Tempest with the crazy response to understand that their only win condition is to stay and idle, and you gotta think the Dignitas strategy backfired. They played it so exceptionally well. but the talent to your advantage, the Infinite Archon, stayed up for at least 2 minutes there. They held ground. They were able to close it out. What a wild game one of this set.
Yeah, I bet that felt Infinite Archon when your team Dignitas trying to deal with that. They may have only had the Malthael, but the way that Tempest moved in and out with the minions, the way they held control, and then the turn, the flip, everything on ETC, taking him out in the blink of an eye was insane. That game was amazing. I can't wait to see what we have in store for the next one.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, of course, to the desk as we continue things on. Game number 2 about to begin later, but of course there is so much to talk about with that game at number 1. So many plays, so many weird little dynamics that you don't normally see in Heroes of the Storm. Where do we even begin? I suppose we have to first start with the core attempt from Dignitas, Dread.
I mean, it was an insanely risky decision. You can ultimately kind of understand the thought process there to be able to draw them back and not give up the objective at the same point in time. But ultimately, if you're going to move into the core and you're going to make that kind of risky all-in play, you have to be considering the momentum swing you're going to give the opponent. And I feel like Tempest immediately understood that this was possibly going to be the only momentum swing they were going to get into their favor, and they did a great job of forcing their hand, even though they had, I mean, near non-existent siege.
I mean, we discussed about the threat that they had with the wave clear for the Shrine Control, and it felt like, you know, that was their go-in strategy, right? They took every single Punisher for the most part. They'd always go and, you know, command that side of things. They had the XP, they had the wave clear. We discussed that was really the biggest strength that Tempest had into this one, and you saw the Hail Mary play that I'm sure Trek wants to discuss as well with that medevac going in. There were some cool little interactions where it does pop up in chat where we were discussing Dread as well, where you can say, like, I'm going to bait in as one member in the chat. You could see a few times where Tempest had been time to back, and you can play those mental games, try and draw people out, but it wasn't to be enough. Yes, they had a few defensive cooldowns like the Gust, like the Mosh, but as soon as JPL went down, that was the beginning of the end.
The enemy has summoned a medevac is one of the scariest things that you can see on the front screen there. And they try to use the moment for defense pretty deliberately. Like, let's go ahead and use that, try and make our opponents back home. And maybe if 1 or 2 goes back, it's totally worth it, right? But Tempest just a little bit too smart, feigning their backs constantly, waiting for that actual response, and then moving in for the defense. Remember, the first time they went for that core rush, only 45%, which meant, all right, if we get back in time, we have an entire 55% core plus the armor to defend. So Tempest actually wasn't under any pressure of the game ending.
And it should be noted on that core dive that we saw out of Team Dignitas, it would have been a lot more successful if 1 or 2 things had happened on Mene's part. Either the flight comes in a little bit earlier, able to join with the rest of the squad, hit an effective gust, and by debatably, you know, 4 or 5 more seconds for the team, that's putting the core 20, 30% down. So now we see the core at 20 to 30% HP overall. And that's when Dig can use that medevac backdoor strategy and threaten way